All right, guys, so our registration is complete. Now what I want to do is be able to log in to get a token as well. So the login route or the authentication route is going to go in our auth.js, so routes auth.js. And we're going to actually copy a lot from users.js. I'm going to copy all the stuff we brought in, like bcrypt, because we need to we're not hashing the password, but we need to compare it so that we can validate a plain text password against the hash. And then we also need JWT, we need config for the secret, and also the validation check and the user model. So we're actually going to copy all that stuff and bring that into auth. So let's see, this here is going to validate the logged in user. We're not going to do that just yet because we have to write a piece of middleware to basically get the ID from the token. So let's go down to this route where we're actually authenticating the user. Now we're going to have some validation here to make sure that there's an email and a password sent. So remember how we do that? We use the brackets here as a second parameter and we add our checks. So let's check for email. For the message, we'll say, please include a valid email and say .is email. Okay, and then we want to go after that and do another check. So this is going to be for password. And let's just say password is required. And the rule for that, we can just do exists, and let's save that. Okay, now just like we did with the other validation, we have to add this part at the top. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this where we get the errors and we check to see if there's any errors. If there are, then we just send that response. So let's put that right here. Okay, that'll take care of the error checking. Now I'm also going to make this async so that we can use async await with Mongoose and bcrypt. And then in here, let's take the email and the password out of the body. So just like we did before with the register, only there's no name. We're logging in, so we don't have to put the name in. It's just email and password. Okay, and we're going to take that from request.body. And I'm going to do a try catch here. And inside the try, let's go ahead and say let user, and we want to see if the user exists. So I'm going to do await since user.find1 returns a promise, and let's check by email. Now the way that we want to do this is if there's not a user, then we want to send back an error that says invalid credentials. So let's say if not user. If there's no user with that email, then let's return a status of 400, and let's send back some JSON with a message that says invalid credentials. Okay, so if there is a user, so we'll keep going here. If there is a user, then we want to continue to check the password because up to this point we've only checked the email. So the way that we can do this is using the bcrypt.compare method. So we're going to create a variable here called isMatch and set this to await because this bcrypt compare returns a promise. So bcrypt.compare, and this takes in two things: the plain text password, which is just our password variable that comes in from the body. And then the hash password is going to be the user that was found, their password, okay, whatever's stored in the database. And then this is going to return either true or false if they match. So we're going to say if they don't match, so if not is match, then let's do a return res.status 400, and let's say .json, and we're going to do the same thing, a message with invalid credentials. Okay, so we're sending it here if there's no email, and we're sending it here if the password doesn't match. So if it does match, then we're going to keep going here, and we're going to do exactly what we did in the register, which is send the token. So we can actually just copy from here the payload and let's see, all this stuff. Let's see, this sign ends right here. So we're going to grab the whole JWT sign and the payload, and let's bring that over here and paste that in. Okay, so if everything is okay, we're going to get the user ID, which comes from right here, from that user that's in the database. And then we're going to pass it into JWT sign with the secret, expires, and then same thing, we're going to just return the token. Okay, and the catch here, let's just do console error, and we'll say error dot message, and let's do a res dot status of 500, and then just send server error. Okay, so let's try it. Let's try to log in. So I'm going to go back to Postman. Now, this is still the register route, and I actually want to save this. So what I'm going to do is over here on the side, I'm going to create a new collection, and I'm going to call this Contact Keeper API. And let's create. And then inside here, let's create a folder, and we'll call this users and auth. And again, if you took my MERN-STAT course, this is very similar. So this request, I want to actually save this. So I'm going to say save as, and let's change it to register user. We'll say register user. Actually, that's all. That's fine. And I'm going to save it to the Contact Keeper API users and auth folder. So now I have this stored in case I want to register another user. I can just change this data here. Okay, so now I'm going to do the login. So I'm going to copy this. Let's close that up, and let's make a post request to not /users but /auth, because that's the login route. And we need to add to the body here. Well, actually, let's add our header of content type application /JSON, and then in the body we'll send raw JSON. And if we try to send without the correct fields, we get our error checking from Express Validator. So let's make sure we do email. And I'm going to do the wrong email first. Let's do jdo1@gmail. And also the wrong password, just so we can check each situation out. Let's do 1 through 5. So if we say send, we get invalid credentials. So let's do the correct email. We know that jdo@gmail is registered, but let's do the wrong password. Okay, that doesn't work. If I do the right password with the wrong email, that doesn't work. Okay, if I do the right password and the right email and send, we get our token. So that's exactly what should be happening. All right, so hopefully this makes sense. Now that we have the token, we want to then create a piece of middleware to validate the token and pull out the user ID or add it to our request object so we can do what we want with that ID. Now, before we end this video, I'm just going to save this request as well. So I'll say save as, and let's say login user, and we'll save this to users and auth, and there we go. Okay, so that's it. In the next video, we'll create our middleware so that we can actually validate the token and we can access protected routes.